Coming up on Arirang News. The Palestinian militant group Hamas says 7 civilian hostages have been killed as a result of Israeli airstrikes at a refugee camp. Amid the deepening humanitarian crisis, hundreds of foreigners and injured Palestinians are expected to leave Gaza. President Yoon once again stresses fiscal soundness, doing so today at a town hall meeting, as it is directly linked to inflation and people's livelihoods. This is in his remarks while sitting down with 60 residents from various walks of life. After a year of drops, South Korea's exports pulled off an all-year rebound in October, posting a record-high figure this year, led by key export items including automobiles and ships. With this, the nation logs a trade surplus for a 5th consecutive month. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start in Gaza, where Hamas says 7 civilian hostages have been killed as a result of Israeli airstrikes on a densely populated refugee camp there. And amid the ongoing crisis, hundreds of foreign nationals are expected to make their way out of Gaza. Choi Min-jung leads us off. Civilian hostages have reportedly been killed in Israeli strikes on a refugee camp in Jabalia, Gaza. Palestinian militant group Hamas said Wednesday that 7 civilians, including 3 foreign passport holders, were killed. On Tuesday, the Israeli military carried out airstrikes targeting the Jabalia refugee camp and announced that it had killed a top Hamas commander responsible for the October 7th attack on Israel. Hamas denied the claim, and the Gaza Health Ministry, controlled by Hamas, said the strikes killed and wounded hundreds. Palestinian health officials said at least 50 people were killed. The Health Ministry spokesman said that the number of victims may be the largest witnessed in the war so far. Meanwhile, foreign passport holders on Wednesday entered the Rafah crossing for the very first time since the start of the war. According to the Associated Press, dozens of people entered the crossing from Gaza to Egypt. The crossing comes as Qatar reportedly mediated an agreement between Egypt, Israel, and Hamas in coordination with the U.S. to allow foreign passport holders and some severely injured people to move out of Gaza. The Palestinian Crossing Authority said more than 400 foreign passport holders would be permitted to leave Gaza on Wednesday. The ongoing Israel-Hamas war has so far killed more than 10,000 people. According to Gaza's health ministry, at least 8,500 have been killed in Palestine. Among the dead are some 3,500 children, taking up more than a third of the death toll. According to Israeli officials, more than 1,400 people have been killed in Israel. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News. Civilians are the ones paying the price for the intensifying war between Israel and Hamas. People in Gaza spend all day trying to find food and water, and serious health and hygiene problems are making the crisis even more serious. Choi Soo-young reports.
Israel has imposed a complete blockade on Gaza since October 9th, increasing the intensity of its attacks, including retaliatory airstrikes and sending in ground troops, leaving those in the Gaza Strip in a desperate situation. According to the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, following the imposition of the blockade, food and water are running out, and hundreds of Gaza residents are starving as they desperately try to obtain essential food items such as bread and vegetables.
We hope that the shops will manage to maintain the essential food supplies, such as flour and cooking oil. We also need car parts and diesel fuel. Today, I had to travel a long way in an ox cart to buy flat bread, but got nothing.
The Gaza Strip used to depend on Israel and Egypt for most of its food. However, when Hamas won in the Palestinian Legislative Council elections in 2006, Israel imposed a partial blockade. As a result, over half of the Gaza population fell into poverty, and the recent war has pushed many into starvation. Israel has allowed a small amount of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, but the UN World Food Programme estimates that this may only last for about 7 days. Furthermore, Israel has completely halted fuel supplies due to concerns about Hamas hijacking them for military use.
Due to the difficulty in finding transportation, as there are no cars because there is no diesel or gas, we are forced to ride a donkey cart because it is all that is available now.
Moreover, diseases such as skin infections and the emergence of head lice are spreading rapidly, leading to a public health disaster. According to the Middle East Monitor, schools and camps operated by refugee aid organizations are overcrowded because more than 15,000 Gaza residents are seeking refuge from Israeli airstrikes, causing serious life-threatening health and hygiene issues.
I am raising alarm about the possibly catastrophic consequences of large-scale ground operations in Gaza and the potential for thousands more civilians to die.
The Gaza Health Ministry said generators in the two main hospitals in Gaza will completely stop without essential fuel and electricity supplies, and there is a growing risk of infant mortality due to a lack of food and infrastructure damage from the fighting. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden says that he'll veto the Israel aid bill proposed by the House Republicans if it were to be passed. If passed, $14.3 billion in aid would be given to Israel, but none to Ukraine. Senators from both parties are voicing doubts about the bill, while the White House says the bill would be bad for Israel, while the Middle East and the national security of the United States. This is after Biden requested $106 billion in aid to Israel and Ukraine. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Israel again on Friday for meetings with the Israeli government, as well as making other stops in the region. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is planning to make a two-day visit to South Korea next week for the first time since President Yoon took office. The Foreign Ministry announced that Minister Park Jin and Blinken will have talks next Thursday to discuss a range of issues from the ROK-US alliance and tensions with North Korea to regional and economic securities and advanced technology. Also, the trip comes ahead of an expected meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping this month. The ministry expects the trip to become a milestone in bolstering the strategic partnership between Seoul and Washington as they mark the 70th anniversary of their alliance. North Korea appears to be in the final stages of preparations for what will be its third attempt to launch a spy satellite. On the occasion of Wednesday's parliamentary audit, South Korea's National Intelligence Service said final preparations are in full swing, including inspections on engine and launch devices. It also added that there is a higher chance that the third launch will be successful, as the regime appears to have received technical advice from Russia. The NIS also says that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is believed to have ordered officials to come up with ways to support Palestine. The agency also spotted signs that the regime has provided Russia with more than 1 million artillery rounds since early August. North Korea has closed its embassy in Spain, which also follows the recent shutdown of several of its diplomatic missions around the world. A diplomatic document released by the Communist Party of the Peoples of Spain on Wednesday showed Pyongyang's announcement that it'll be closing its embassy there and that its embassy in Italy will be in charge of matters from now on. It did not elaborate or give a reason for the closure. Also on Wednesday, China confirmed North Korea's plan to shut down its consulate general in Hong Kong. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said during a press briefing that China respects the decision. The North's latest move comes just days after it closed a number of its embassies in Africa, including those in Uganda and Angola, which the South Korean government has said is a sign that the regime is struggling to make money overseas because of global sanctions. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are to meet in San Francisco later this month. Eyes are on how they'll manage their rivalry and competition at this juncture. Bae Eun-ji takes a closer look at what could be topping their agenda.
The White House has said President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are expected to meet in November. A spokesperson confirmed in a White House press briefing on Tuesday local time that the two leaders are aiming to hold constructive talks.
It's going to be in San Francisco. It's going to be a constructive meeting.
Their summit is expected to be held on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in San Francisco, which will take place from November 11th to 17th. But China has not yet confirmed that Xi will be at the APEC meeting, and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi warned on Saturday that the road to talks is still not smooth. One expert says if the summit does take place, the two leaders will likely focus on economic issues, such as technology, trade, as well as semiconductors, a field South Korea is leading in.
South Korea dominates the chip market and we have a lot of production, so I think we should make use of them. And it could also be an opportunity to improve relations with China.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong said on Tuesday that its finance minister Paul Chan will attend the APEC meeting on behalf of its leader John Lee, a move seen to smooth over a diplomatically sensitive issue for both Beijing and Washington. Earlier in July, Beijing demanded that Washington invite Lee, who was under U.S. sanctions for his role in a political crackdown in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's latest decision comes just days after the Chinese foreign minister made a rare visit to Washington, where both sides agreed to work towards a summit between their presidents. 배은지, Arirang News.
A day after his budget speech at the National Assembly, President Yoon once again stresses fiscal soundness, doing so today at a town hall meeting as it is directly linked to inflation and people's livelihoods. While sitting down with 60 residents from various walks of life in a more casual way, he spoke about economic issues, including the monopolization of the banks. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon said cutting government spending was to stabilize prices, which ultimately will help the working and middle classes.
왜냐하면 결국은 돈이 든단 말이에요. 돈이 드는데 그 돈을 누가 부담할 거냐. 또 재정에서 이걸 쓰려고 하면 이게 예산을 막 늘릴 수는 없잖아요. 예산이 막 정부 재정 지출이 팍팍 들어가면요. 물가가 오릅니다.
This was his message on Wednesday as Yoon presided over the 21st Emergency Economic Meeting with 60 residents from all backgrounds and relevant ministers in a town hall setting at a cafe in Seoul's Mapogu district.
This meeting was held at a cafe, a place where people gather, reflecting the president's consistent emphasis that the people are always right and the need to leave the office to listen to what people have to say in person.
Also, citizens shared their hardships with the president, who listened and promised to consider their needs as he carries out his economic policies. One of them was a taxi driver who called out the nation's major taxi calling application Kakao Mobility, saying it was using its leverage to drive up the commission it charges drivers. President Yoon said this was in fact an unethical act by a monopoly and called on the relevant ministers present to come up with measures to stop this corporate behavior. Yoon also called out major banks for their monopolizing of the sector and not helping out small business owners. He said the banking system in South Korea has to be changed. As he spoke with the citizens, Yoon reflected on when he first jumped into politics after spending his career as a prosecutor. It's widely known that a shopkeeper from Mapogu district was one of the motivations for the transition he made as he saw how hard making a living was for the working class. Yoon spoke frankly of the hardships of the presidency, especially as a nation is in an era of political excess with resistance to budget reallocations.
이거를 어려운 서민들을 두툼하게 지원해 주는 쪽으로 예산을 좀 재배치를 시키면 아우성입니다. 아우성이에요. 내년 선거 때 보자. 아주 탄핵시킨다. 뭐 이런 얘기까지 막 나옵니다.
Yoon also pledged that he would not prioritize political gain, even with the general election coming up in a few months, and take responsibility for all his actions. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Yoon on Wednesday vowed to allocate resources to childcare and remove factors that restrict women's active participation in society. This said during his congratulatory remarks at the 58th National Women's Convention held in Seoul, encouraging women to continue taking active leading roles in society. Yoon highlighted that we must make great use of women's capabilities to make a new leap forward. The event hosted by the Korean National Council of Women focuses on promoting gender equality. President Yoon attended the event as a presidential candidate back in 2021. On the trade front, after a year of drops, South Korea's exports pulled off an on-year rebound in October, posting a record-high figure this year led by key export items including automobiles and ships. With this, the nation logs a trade surplus for a fifth consecutive month. Park Gun-woo has the latest numbers.
South Korea's exports for the month of October jumped 5.1% on year, reaching a new high for 2023. According to the Trade Ministry on Wednesday, this was the first time in 13 months that South Korea saw an increase in exports compared to the year before. The country's trade balance in October was in the black for the fifth consecutive month, with the export volume exceeding $55 billion and imports hovering under the $54 billion line for a surplus of some $1.6 billion. Robust exports were mainly attributed to the performance of core export items, including automobiles, general machinery, ships, and displays, which have all seen a jump for several consecutive months. The higher cost of petroleum products also pushed outbound shipments up for the first time in 8 months. Semiconductors, one of South Korea's largest export goods, saw a recovery last month as well, after a poor performance in Q1. By region, 6 out of 9 of Korea's major outbound shipping markets saw an increase in October. In particular, exports to the U.S. were highest for any October, mainly backed by electric vehicle exports. Total exports to the U.S. came to $10.1 billion, exceeding the $10 billion mark for the second consecutive month. Exports to China remained above $10 billion for the third straight month, while shipments to the ASEAN region were not just a new high in 2023, but also for any October on record. As for imports last month, due to higher prices for energy sources such as gas and coal, the figure shrank by over 9% year-on-year. Meanwhile, South Korea's trade minister stressed that recent export data is evidence of recovery, even in times of global uncertainty, including high interest rates and oil prices. He added that the government would do its very best to maintain this trend until the end of the year. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea now has a total of 74 farms with cases of lumpy skin disease among cattle as of Wednesday afternoon. 4 were newly confirmed on Wednesday, and 1 more is under investigation. Health authorities have supplied approximately 4 million doses of the vaccine to all local governments across the country. Vaccinations for cattle are set to be completed by November 10th. The disease is known to cause fever and possibly death among cattle, but is not contagious from animals to humans. Meanwhile, a coalition of countries, including South Korea, will seal a deal pledging not to pay ransoms to cyber criminals. This as the UN accuses North Korea of illegal funding of its weapons programs through this means. Kim Jung-sil has details.
40 countries, including South Korea and the U.S., plan to sign a pledge never to pay ransoms to cyber criminals. They're part of a U.S.-led alliance that will also work toward eliminating the hackers' funding mechanisms. The White House announced a plan on Tuesday local time. The International Counter-Ransomware Initiative, a 2-day event ending on November 1st, includes representatives from 48 countries, the EU, and Interpol. This is the 3rd annual event that is being hosted by the U.S., which, according to the White House, is the country that has been hit hardest by cybercrime. It aims to eradicate the criminals' funding by sharing information, including the ransom payment accounts.
The initiative comes as FBI Director Christopher Wray emphasized the risks of cyber attacks at Tuesday's U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. Wray said in the last few years, countries like China, North Korea, and Russia, quote, use cyber operations to target U.S. research. He also said cyber attacks by China, Russia, and Iran are becoming more aggressive and more capable than ever before. The FBI director said he's most worried that these adversaries focus on, quote, compromising U.S. critical infrastructure, especially during a crisis. In ransomware attacks, hackers hack into an organization's systems to steal information or encrypt data and demand ransom in exchange for unlocking it. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Korea has become a significant Indo-Pacific partner for Europe in recent times. Now, this is according to a scholar of global affairs who believes Korea is capable of contributing broadly to tackling universal challenges. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young met up with him.
South Korea has grown as an important Indo-Pacific partner for European countries and a force for multilateral cooperation amid war and tensions across the world. That's according to Ramon Pacheco-Pardo, a professor of King's College London who recently co-authored Korea, A New History of South and North. Speaking to Arirang News, Pacheco-Pardo said the perception of South Korea has changed over the past year and a half, particularly among European governments, which are increasing their engagement in the Indo-Pacific to secure peace and development, where 60% of the world's maritime trade passes through. He said Seoul's surge of soft and material power in recent years has shown its growing capacity to contribute to resolving global challenges, looking beyond its own security interests on the Korean peninsula.
It's not only the demand for Korea to do more, but they believe that Korea has the economic resources, technological resources, diplomatic resources, and military resources, along with the soft power, to contribute more, to contribute to the provision of global goods, aid, for example, to developing countries. You also see, for example, when it comes to supply chains, diversification or de-risking, as some people call it, away from China. Well,
the expert noted that Seoul was invited to the G7 and NATO summits for 2 straight years since 2023, with President Yoon pushing to bolster global solidarity and institutions to deter threats from North Korea, ensure peace and the rule of law in regional waters, stabilize supply chains, and support the green transition and global development. In particular, Seoul's trilateral cooperation with Washington and Tokyo, set out at the Camp David summit in August, is expected to become the driving force for building peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific.
I think it is necessary for Korea, Japan, and the US to make sure that they start implementing at least some of the deliverables from the Camp David statement as soon as possible, whether it's a dialogue, education program, whether it is the joint development of deterrence capabilities that they were talking about, for example, in the area of economic security.
But beyond trilateral efforts, multilateralism is crucial to keeping the momentum going, beyond political forces of change that may come as a result of key elections next year, particularly the US presidential race. Here, Pacheco-Pardo said Seoul can play a crucial role in solidifying the network of like-minded partners, especially in maritime cooperation and high-tech areas like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity and space.
In terms of making this a success, I think it is necessary also to engage other partners. Of course, Korea, Japan and the US can do a lot together, but many of the areas they focus on, for example, economic security, for example, they do focus on the development of new technologies. You really need other partners. You need Europe, you need Canada, you need Australia, you need Taiwan as well.
Having held 142 summits with 93 countries so far, Yoon is set to engage with a number of European countries until the year end, in bilateral summits with the leaders of Ireland, the UK and the Netherlands. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Warmer than average temperatures are in the forecast again for most regions. Tomorrow, conditions will get even warmer. Seoul will see highs of 25 degrees Celsius. Other regions such as Gyeongju will see even warmer spells with highs of 28 degrees. Warmer daytime conditions will create a big contrast in daily temperatures, especially for the south, where a high-pressure system is currently taking over. With a rise in the overall readings, dust concentrations will temporarily soar. For parts of central regions, including the Seoul metropolitan area in Gangwon-do province, fine dust levels will be standing in the bad category. Make sure to wear a mask that can filter out the dust particles. Morning temperatures in Seoul will start off at 17 degrees, Busan and Jeju at 16 degrees Celsius. More sunshine will be building up for the daytime. Daily highs in Seoul and Gwangju will get up to 25. Daegu 26, Gyeongju will be very warm at 28 degrees. Showers are in the forecast this coming Friday, and they will last until the end of the weekend. After the rain, colder spells are expected. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news. Good night.